Hello, my name is Logan Amick. Today I'm going to be providing details of the Brown versus Board of Education case and how it affected people of different races in a time when equality, even though it was clearly spelled out in the Constitution as every U.S. citizen having the benefit of equal rights, and somehow was allowed to be labeled as separate but equal. So question number one, to give a brief summary of Brown versus Board of Education ultimate ruling. It was a highly publicized case of racial segregation in public schools. So the argument was motivated by challenging the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment states that every citizen born in the U.S. or had become a citizen of the U.S., including African Americans and slaves who had been freed after the Civil War, were granted equal civil and legal rights. So this case, so when a African American family moved into a predominantly white neighborhood, they assumed that their daughter would attend the school that is closest to them. But they were ultimately denied access because she was African American. And instead of, walking to school with her friends, that's just a short walk away, she was forced to walk 6 blocks, take a bus, and to go to a all African American school. Some quick examples that I came up with that were related to this are, say, me and a friend go to a store together, but we can't shop or check out in the same areas. We can walk into a restaurant together, but we can't sit and eat together. So that was just some quick examples. So this whole case sparked a huge debate with other African American families in the same boat. They all presented their cases as a group and were represented by the NCAA's Chief Counsel Thurgood Marshall. So this case was won after arguments were made against the idea that just because an establishment offered equal amenities to everyone, it didn't have the same meaning of equality according to the 14th Amendment. So Marshall argued that the 14th does not state that an establishment must provide equal things. Instead stated that there should be equality to every U.S. citizen. So the Supreme Court ultimately ruled in favor of Brown, and it was a huge advancement in civil rights, in the civil rights movement. So question two, that was question one. Question two, the central question that the Brown Court indicated must be answered is, does the segregation of public education based on race violate the 14th Amendment? So the Supreme Court emphasized that the Equal Protection Clause of the U.S. Constitution by ruling that separate but equal facilities are inherently unequal, and they violate the Protection Clause of the 14th. So places like restaurants, schools, movie theaters, stores that segregated people, they offered the same amenities to each group, but they had separate seating and separate places for them to shop, separate places for them to watch movies and whatnot. So that's what it was violated, basically. They're saying that it's not, the 14th Amendment is every U.S. citizen should be able to shop in the same place and not be separated to shop, not be separated to eat, not be separated to watch movies. So along the lines of that. Number three, what were the effects of segregation on public education at the time of the Brown ruling? So at the time of the Brown ruling, the effects of segregation on public education were strained. It was a confusing time for students who had been separated and then told that they couldn't be with their friends because of their color of their skin. And when the Brown versus Board of Education ruled in favor of Brown, it seemed to be a great victory. However, it did take many years for states to actually implement the integration of students into their schools. That's mainly because most states had their own laws regarding segregation, and that just sort of delayed the process. But some states were fully integrated and were allowed to go into schools closest to them, but still, they couldn't help but feel uncomfortable because they felt like they weren't wanted there. But obviously, as time passed, it became a normal concept, and those feelings weren't as apparent. So basically, in my mind, it's like, imagine going to a school trying to learn while being treated differently and unfairly. Students might have been angry or upset and pretended like nothing was happening, an attempt to actually retain information that they needed to get the education. So it really must have been a difficult time for these students. So question number 4. What harms do you believe would result if an employer were allowed to require its employees to work in facilities that were separated by the employee's race? So if an employer was allowed to require its employees to work in facilities that were separated because of their race, I mean, that would cause employees to raise lawsuits against them, because they're not only protected by the Constitution, but also federal and corporate laws as well. So these laws protect the individual against discrimination on race, color, religion, or national origin and whatnot. So this would also ultimately create a hostile work environment. Employees would feel that they were being treated unfairly. So if a place of employment segregated today, like they did during the Brown versus Board of Education case in 1954, there would obviously be, like, that company would have negative publicity, you know what I mean? That company would be beaten up, like, with the whole internet and whatnot nowadays, like, that would be totally wrong. So, like, employees obviously would spread the word quickly, and of how, like, the company doesn't follow the rules, you know what I mean? So ultimately, because the lawsuits, the damages caused and income from that emotional distress, the company will ultimately, I feel like, would go under. This is just my example, with fines and whatnot. So this will not be allowed today. So this entire case was a huge pivotal moment in civil rights, and it needed to happen. So yeah, that's all I got. Thank you.